In this episode of Unscripted, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Trina Williams, Vice President of Operations and Performance at Willow Bridge. Trina is a great example of the type of team member every successful organization needs on their leadership team. An operations-minded leader who is much more comfortable behind the scenes, putting in the work, than out in front in the limelight. So the fact that she agreed to come down to a studio and get on camera on a Saturday was a huge honor for us. Thank you, Trina. See, Trina's career in multifamily makes her a bit of a unicorn. We get into it in the discussion, but she started in a unique position, took a path through internal audit versus operational management, and has remained at the same company, Willow Bridge, formerly known as Lincoln, for 24 years. With that type of career, I couldn't help but ask what she felt makes Willow Bridge special and what it takes to successfully navigate a brand change as large as going from Lincoln to Willow Bridge. And I'll give you a little hint. A lot of over-communication with all stakeholders. But that's all I'm going to tease. And of course, before we roll into the discussion, just a reminder that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official position or policy of LeaseLock. The content is intended for general informational purposes only and should not be construed as professional advice or endorsements. While we strive to ensure that the content is as accurate and up-to-date as possible, LeaseLock makes no representations or warranties of any kind, expressed or implied, regarding the accuracy, completeness, or reliability of the information discussed. The content is provided as is, and LeaseLock assumes no responsibility for any errors or omissions. Listeners should consult with qualified professionals before making any decisions based on the content of this podcast. This podcast may include references to third-party sources, which are provided for convenience and informational purposes only. LeaseLock does not endorse or take responsibility for the accuracy or reliability of any third-party content. In no event shall LeaseLock, its affiliates, or any of its employees, officers, or agents be liable for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, or consequential damages arising out of or in conjunction with the use or the reliance of the content of this podcast. Now, with a highly scripted disclaimer out of the way, let's get unscripted. Trina, I really appreciate you coming in and doing this and sitting down with me. I know that you have expressed earlier to me that being in front of the camera is not the most comfortable thing in the world for you. Right. So I'm going to guess that you haven't done a whole bunch of these and had a whole bunch of exposure. So why don't you share with the audience kind of a little bit about who you are and what you do? Yeah,
sure. Thanks for having me, actually.
Absolutely.
So I am the Vice President of Operations and Performance for Willow Bridge Property Company. I've been with the company for 24 years.
Wow.
Started when I was 6.
Yep. I like telling that same story.
Yes. So, and I kind of stumbled into the industry like most folks who are in the property management arena. I was out of college, had a job. It was going okay, wasn't loving it. So then my husband's friend was in the property management industry.
Okay.
And they were like, oh, you should try this. I was like, oh, okay, fine. So let me do this until I figure out what I really want to do.
Sounds like a very familiar story.
24 years later, I'm still here with the same company.
So now I cheated. I looked on your LinkedIn earlier and kind of this. Now, did you start in the leasing side of the equation or did you start on another side of the equation in property management?
I started as an assistant manager.
Oh, so you came in straight in as an assistant.
I did. I think that was a little bit of an anomaly. It doesn't really happen like that. So I think just the right timing, right? So came in as an assistant manager, did that for about 2.5 years. Then I was promoted to the internal audit department.
Okay, so that's where I saw your LinkedIn take off. That's where I was thinking you started. Okay.
Yes. So internal audit, I was there, did that for, 8, 9, 10 years. Became the director of the department, vice president, added on other functions, and then I ended up as vice president of ops and performance.
Okay, so having been there for 24 years. That's kind of the opposite of what most people do in the industry, especially going from property manager where they typically don't build you a bigger, better property next door. So you go to that next opportunity. What was it about Willow Bridge over the course of 24 years that made it so special that you wanted and were willing to stay for 2+ decades?
Yeah. The culture it's a great culture. The company has a great culture. You stay places because of the people.
Sure.
So I could probably have done the same job somewhere else, but I would lose that culture and the people that had, in some instance, became my family.
Yeah. So when you think about that, you're thinking about the people that you're with. I go back to a lot of organizations. They see those people bouncing back and forth. So those people move, and very often they take people with them, or they, someone goes and follows someone. Not that I did that personally recently. Was it the people who were reporting up through you that was holding you there, or was it the people that you were reporting to, or was it just the overall culture and feel at Willow Bridge that really made it feel like family for you? Dig into that a little bit more.
I would say the overall culture and feel from the top down. Okay. Everyone had a path and were given an opportunity. So I knew I didn't want to go the RPM route. I knew I didn't want to, stay on the property side of things. So there was a path I took that led me to internal audit, which then led me to the more corporate role that I'm currently in. So
okay, so there's a couple things in there I want to dig into with you. We're going to get back to what I would consider the kind of unconventional path that you took, because in the industry now there's a lot of what I would call specialization, and I'm curious to get your take on how culture is kind of fit within there. But before we go down that path, I'd like to ask the question around the transition from Lincoln to Willow Bridge. How do you, I guess, how did the culture either stay the same or change, and what kind of active role did you guys take in making that happen? Because to me, from the outside, it looks like it's been a pretty wild success.
Yes, it was, but behind the scenes, there was a lot going on.
Sure.
So it was a very methodical approach to the rebrand because, Lincoln Property Company, almost 6 years old, great reputation, great place in the industry. So we wanted to make sure that we kept that, included the great culture, and kind of improve upon it. So sure. Not to make a huge shift we're going from one name to another, but we're going from one name to another, but we're still the same. Same people, same culture, just a different brand. And behind the scenes with that, to make sure that we were successful with that, there were lots of touch points with everyone across the business. There was not just this small group of people who decided what the name would be. There were focus groups involved. There were meetings. There was constant communication. And like I said, there was a methodical approach to each aspect of the brand change.
So again, looking at it from the outside in, because I was involved, with the groups, I literally did a road show with you guys right after the brand change. So it was the giant party kickoff that obviously is really the culmination of all that work, not the start of that work. And then I was in most of your regional offices, where it was kind of funny. You could see the progression over 4 months of everything still says Lincoln.
Right.
To, I think by the last one we went into, which I think was Austin, it was like everything said Willow Bridge.
Yes.
How hard was it, and what kind of efforts did you take to make sure that you were communicating internally that, we've changed the name, the brand is changing, we're making it more modern, but it's still okay to be proud of where we've been?
Yes. So the communication piece with the teams, right? We knew that we had to change our name. We told them early on we have to change our name, but that does not change who we are as a company, who we are as people who work for Lincoln Property Company. It was several touch points, like I said earlier, throughout the process, but then also, so they felt like they were along the ride with us. It wasn't. It was a big reveal, but it wasn't a surprise. So I think that having the whole everybody in the company, from the CEO down to porters, housekeepers, everyone in between, were communicated with throughout this whole process.
So interesting. So if I'm interpreting that correctly, it really was, as far as the actual branding and everything goes, it really was more of a top-down approach. But it sounds like you built the excitement of, hey, this is coming.
Yes.
We can't wait to share it with you and why, and then use that as kind of a company event to really, I'm going to use the word expose because I don't have a better word for it, but expose the new brand. Am I getting that right?
Yes. It was a big buildup. So it wasn't oh my goodness, we have to change our brand. It was, guess what? This is great. We're going to change our brand. We're still the same, but we're going to have a different brand refresh. Just kind of put us out. We've always been in the forefront, but kind of reset us again. So like you said, be more modern. We're still the same people from Lincoln,
right? But
now we're Willow Bridge, which you get the old people from Lincoln plus the new forward-thinking Willow Bridge.
It's interesting. I didn't think I was going to go down this path, but I will. for whatever reason, and you can share this with your social media team, the YouTube algorithm has found me and wants me to work for Willow Bridge.
Well,
but it was interesting because it's the one I see a lot of different groups out there advertising their properties online.
mm-hmm.
So far to date, I think I'm accurate in this one. Willow Bridge is the only one I've been seeing, at least in my algorithm, that's been really pushing the Willow Bridge brand as an employer and as a family. So it was really interesting to see that portion of it as well. Just a little anecdote of what's going on in my YouTube feed.
Love to hear it. Yeah.
So I'll go back to a second thing you said in there that I said we'd come back to, and that is the idea of, what a lot of people call centralization. I push back and say specialization of the roles. Obviously it is something that the industry is talking a lot about. How do we get better at performance by really focusing individuals on more narrow sets of tasks.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, different organizations are in different levels of that. I don't know exactly where Willow Bridge is at, but when we think about those types of things, how have you seen kind of the culture of Willow Bridge, come into play when it comes to, okay, where can we really focus people to drive performance?
Yes. So centralization it's tricky, right?
Yeah.
I like to think of it as we're more so looking at centralizing functions as opposed to people and roles.
Right.
We're very cognizant of people and their career path as well. So, when you think about a centralized role, that means that person's going to be a leaser. That's what they're going to do, lease apartments, nothing else. They're not going to learn how to do owner's reports. They're not going to learn how to do variances and things like that. So it's going to put them in a box. So we want to make sure that we're not stifling the growth of our employees. So it's tricky. So we're trying to navigate our way through that.
I love that you point that out because it's something that it's been a recurring theme on this podcast and just in conversations is, in my, again, I come from the dinosaur age of property management. You said you've been, 20 plus years there. I've been in the business a little over 30 at this point. And, I did start at the leasing side of the equation back in the day, and then it goes leasing, assistant community manager, et cetera. And I'd love to get your thoughts on this. I do think that role specialization has the opportunity to break that development model. Because how do you become a community manager, regional manager, if you haven't been exposed to renewals and delinquency collection and all those types of things? So I'm curious, I know this was on the list of questions, but I'm curious how you think about, okay, if we are going to go down a path towards making people more effective by narrowing their scope of work, also develop that next season of leaders. Have you thought about that?
I think that in order for it to work, you also simultaneously have to give that person a career path.
Yeah.
There needs to be communication. What is your end goal? What would you like to be? Where would you like to see yourself in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? So that way, if they're currently specializing in this one role, then we need to be able to shift and pivot so that person can learn the other skills that's going to give them whatever they need to be in their future role.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you actually started with, okay, where do you want to be in the next 3 to 5 years? I think your own career is actually a really good example of how, okay, yes, there is the traditional well-worn path of assistant community manager, RPM, RVP, all those things. And you decided to go a different route.
Yes.
And you had that career path open to you. So
yes.
I
know who I am, and I'm not an RPM.
That's interesting because I keep going back in the back of my head. I always look at myself. I'm like, yeah, I'm still a regional manager,
yes.
And I still think about those perspectives. Let's think about this from, obviously we talked about the internals of a culture shift and a rebranding. How did you guys think about that from a resident perspective? Because suddenly you're changing, more than just probably the name of the check or the payment that they're making there. How did you guys think about that from branding from a resident perspective and making sure that culture was driving the resident relations that you need? So
a big piece of our culture and a big piece of our motto, or just kind of like our goal, we create places people want to call home. So that's always in the forefront, whether it's resident relations, client relations, employee relations. That's the foundation of why we do what we do. And to keep the residents engaged and help them understand, we also communicated with them a ton throughout the process after the name was announced.
Okay, so let's go into just a little bit, because I love the fact that you call, we create places that people want to call home. What are some of the concrete ways that Willow Bridge is applying the actual methodology to developing areas and developing communities that people want to call home?
I think one of the big ideas, or one of the big pushes that we try to do, is create a true community. This is not your apartment complex where you don't talk to your neighbors. You just go to work, come home, back to work. We try to make it more of a neighborhood type of a feel, as opposed to just, this is your one apartment inside of this 350 unit community. So that would be by having awesome resident events. Again, communicating, having them coming into the office to get FaceTime, because we're in an era where some people don't like to talk to people, which is fine.
Yeah.
But we just have to adjust. We have to meet them where they are.
Yeah, it's interesting. The commentary around, like, I've got two sons that are in various stages of housing. The oldest one's living with his girlfriend in an apartment, and if I were to believe all the research that's out there, they would never want to go into the apartment office no matter what, ever. The reality is, every time he has a work order he needs to get done, he actually prefers to go walk in and talk to them. And that may be a little bit because of who his dad was and made sure he met every staff member when they moved in, so they would take care of him. But it is interesting. But resident events, interactions, having a staff that's able to get out from behind the desk and walk the property and not stuck behind the source property management system all day, taking care of the properties. The reality is, all of those take a line item on the budget. One way or another, they're an expense line item on the budget. You guys do extensively third-party property management.
Yes.
How do you approach communicating the need for those line items on the budget with the ownership that's on there that might be thinking slightly differently? How do you get owners to buy into this same "we build home" places people call homes culture?
I think we have a lot of data internally to help not sell the point, but get the point across, right? And we also are living in a time where we have 4 very distinct different generations that are living on site: boomers, X, millennials, and Z. So they're all completely different, right? So depending on the product, the neighborhood, the area, you have to know, our teams know who their residents are. So because of that, they're able to communicate what the needs are, what maybe we don't need this technology at this property because our residents wouldn't use that. So instead of paying for this, how about we either pull that money back, or we put it somewhere else where it's going to be more helpful down the road?
That's interesting. So from a technology perspective, especially VP of operations, you really are letting maybe not the site teams, but the site leadership determine, okay, what's the right combination of, I'll say, ancillary services, because I'm guessing the core is the core for those, but those ancillary services that are going to best fit the needs of that resident base.
Yes, exactly.
How do they, is there, not to put you on the spot, but is there kind of a formalized way that you think about it from an organization, or is it really, okay, we hire the best people to be in that market and to really understand their market and come forth with the best judgment that they can so we can make a decision?
Yes, we do. So, we're a large company,
Yes,
but we like to also, we're large, so we have the structure, but then our regions and our areas, we want them to be entrepreneurs. So they're the ones who are driving the decisions. We give them the foundations, and they drive the decisions from there, what fits their local areas.
Okay. Since we're on the topic of technology, let's go down this path just a little bit more. Where have you seen examples of the technology helping reinforce the culture of Willow Bridge that you're trying to put in? And then if you have one, without naming a specific name, where maybe have you seen it where it actually went counter to it and said, okay, it was the bright and shiny light, but we probably don't want to chase that?
I think during COVID, there were a lot of different types of technology that came out.
Interesting. Okay.
That we needed it because of the situations we were in with COVID. Now we're out of that. Do we really need them? So without saying anything specific. So we just kind of, as the situation arises,
Sure.
then that's how we would determine whether or not we're going to move forward with the product or not. So.
Okay. So I mean, and that's fair. I'll go to, I'll take smart home technology for a second down that path. If you are going to go down the path of smart home technology, do you really need an automated key box anymore?
Right.
So I mean, it's been replaced by another one without not trying to trash on anybody's smart home technology with that or really key box. So I guess two more additional questions, and I'm going to go two very completely different directions from a time frame perspective with this one. Again, it's not incredibly rare, but there's a lot of people in the industry have worked with at least 2 or 3 different groups. I love to joke that it's the smallest multi-billion-dollar industry on the planet because everybody's worked with everybody at some point. You've been with Willow Bridge for 24 years. Since we've been talking about culture, what in your mind has been the biggest culture shift you've seen at Willow Bridge over the course of the 24 years that you've been there?
Oh my gosh. There's so much more technology now. And with technology, kind of what we talked about a little bit earlier, with losing that sense of talking to people. Yeah. I think that even technology should enhance those relationships and not take away from it. So, yeah, I think some of the technology can tend to have someone back away from some of the cultural things, whether it's not necessarily technology, whether it's working from home. So we're in a time now where people work from home more than they used to. So just being able to still have those same relationships with your coworkers or your teammates that you would have when you were all in the office at the same time. So just pivoting to make sure that you still have those touch points. Yeah, no, because people, that's the bottom line of the culture.
Well, and you hit on a really good point there that I'll kind of dig into just a little bit because, depending on who you ask in the industry, there's either 4 Ps or 5 Ps. I'm a 4P person, but I've always thought that the most important one always has been, always will be people. Yes. Both the people we're hiring to bring on site, as well as obviously the residents that we're serving, and then the ownership that we're serving as well. And as having been someone who's made a career change post COVID, I will readily admit that it is a lot harder to actually meet and know the people in an organization when everyone is actually remote. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a really, really, really strong call out. I also think that as I look back on my career in property management, et cetera, I think it is, and I kind of brought this up earlier, I think it's really easy to get trapped in the leasing office. Yes. Because there's so much we're doing with that technology makes easier. So it's just something we didn't do in the past versus, okay, the technology requires us to be on it. Not that technology isn't necessarily good or evil, but I do think that we do need to think about, okay, is it getting in the way of serving the residents at the end of the day?
Right. And I look at technology as an enhancement. Okay. So you now have this technology that's going to save you 3 hours a week. Those 3 hours should be used going back to the basics. Walk-in properties, walk-in units, and going through the common area spaces, seeing what residents are there, just making those touch points and outside of the resident coming to the office to you. So I think that's super important, and you can't let technology just, allow you to keep your door closed.
And amen. And I think that's an interesting observation, as well as, the technology. If I could put a culture shift that I've seen in the industry a little bit was, back in the day, you really did wait for the person to come in the office. The office was the center of everything. My wife and I often joke, when I was a community manager in Sacramento, I was on an affordable community, and every community has a mayor, right? There's always the mayor of that community. That community happened to be Dorothy, who, without exaggeration, one-legged amputee, always wore a blue one-piece bathing suit around I can literally see her in my head. But I do wonder, in today's world, since every work order can be done online, we're driving people to portals, we're driving people to use the apps, we're doing online payments, etc. How much more, and I'll just ask you as an operation, how much more effort do you think the teams need to put in to actually putting the mouse down and getting outside? Is that something you guys are actively saying, hey, let's go do this?
Absolutely. They should be doing that more so now than ever, because the residents are not going to come to you. Yeah. You have to meet them where they are.
Okay. Thanks for going down that rabbit hole with me. So let's turn the clock the opposite direction now. So we've talked about the biggest culture change that you've kind of seen on there. One of the questions I kind of ask everybody who comes on this is, when you put on your future-looking goggles, you got your crystal ball out, and you're looking at, let's just call it the next 3 years. What's the area of multifamily that you're the most excited about?
Not to keep repeating myself, but I think technology.
Okay.
Again, technology in multifamily I see that there will be more opportunities to become more efficient, whether that's like on the office side or the maintenance side, with client interactions, and also just to be more innovative, thinking outside the box. So there's all this new technology coming at us.
Yeah.
We got to figure out what works and what doesn't work. Where in the world of multifamily, what's the next big thing? We talked about having the old systems where it was a dot matrix, and now everything is, super like AI driven.
We were talking about where we started in software as our careers before we got online. Yes, both of us run DOS.
So to see where the software has come from 24 years ago to now, and we're just kind of like in the middle of like the technology boom in property management. So I think in the next 3 years, we're going to see some huge enhancements that are going to help make teams more efficient.
Interesting. So you, in your opinion, you think we're in the middle of the technology boom?
Yes.
Okay.
Where do you think we are?
I think we're in the second inning. I don't think we're in the middle yet. When I think of some of the things that excite me, both the ways that we can make it, enhance for the teams. And there are groups that are doing that. In fact, basically every group is doing this right now. So I'll talk about a specific example. Everyone likes to talk about large language models and using a chatbots from leasing, et cetera. I think the real exciting application of that is actually within the help systems of the property management systems themselves.
Yes.
So instead of going and watching a 3-minute video that says, hey, how do I move someone in? You literally ask the question into it, and it takes you exactly where to move Mrs. Smith into the system. I think that's one element that I think is really exciting. The other thing I think that is exciting is there's a number of different solutions out there that are looking at, okay, how do we not just improve the operations, but improve the resident experience, from the ability to lease, the ability to remove barriers to leasing, the ability to build those relationships on an ongoing basis, and then kind of carry that after the fact. I think that there's a lot of great ideas out there, but I think some of those ideas are going to fall flat, and some of them are going to take off like wildfire.
Yeah.
And they're going to spur the next set of ideas. So I think AI, not to use the buzzwords that everyone uses, but AI is literally changing everything.
Yes. And to add to that, please, in the maintenance world, technology around that, because that's such a manual process right now. I'm sure that there's stuff that's being worked on, or there's things that are out there now that are going to help enhance that even more than what we're currently seeing. It's funny. I was actually at 2 different conferences this week, not to date this particular episode, but I was at a multifamily conference that was very focused on the investment side of it. And then the next 2 days, I was at a single family rental conference. The technology and the innovation that's happening on the single family side, multifamily isn't even close. Oh wow! It's really, really interesting what they're bringing to bear. We talked about centralization and decentralization earlier. Obviously, they have an incredibly decentralized inventory, so they've got their point of sale solution system tied into their inventory system, tied into their distribution system, tied into their scheduling solution, so that their maintenance people, they never go to a centralized area. Based on the SKUs that are being X'd out of their truck as they work throughout the week, they receive a package on Friday to restock their truck. All of it
basically completely automated down to how the invoices are processed.
No need for them to go into an office.
And again, when you think about the back end office side of that equation, we're not filling out purchase orders. We're not restocking. We're not doing that stuff. It's all been in there. And I think technology and automation like that is where I think specialization and centralization really, really can benefit. It's not necessarily, to your point, okay, we're going to bring all the leasers into one room and they're going to be leasing on that. So,
right.
Yeah. Anyways, didn't know we were going to go down that path. Anyways, Trina, I really, really appreciate you coming in and spending a little time with us. If there's anything you want to promote out there, go ahead and put it out there now, or do you just want people to not contact you?
No, I mean, contact me. Willow Bridge is welcoming and would love to have residents, clients, and employees.
And associates.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.